The Princess of Wales has made an emotional appearance at a Manchester cancer centre, giving a rare insight into her own treatment. Kate Middleton met with nurses and patients undergoing chemotherapy and shared a special moment with one mum who has beaten the disease.
Something completely unexpected just went down under the harsh royal spotlight, and millions of shocked viewers watched it unfold in real time. As Catherine steps into an increasingly prominent role, people are seriously starting to wonder if a quiet power shift is happening behind those closed palace walls. While Queen Camilla remains a major player, the spotlight seems to have drifted elsewhere, igniting a massive debate among royal watchers and seasoned commentators. But is this just a shift in how we see things, or real proof of a massive shake-up inside the British monarchy? Tell me, do you think Catherine is already becoming its most influential figure? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe. The spotlight is fully on Catherine now. Crowds suddenly showed up expecting a standard public appearance, the kind that usually follows a strict and predictable routine. Cameras lined the pavement while reporters prepped their final notes. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But as the event got underway, public attention started shifting in a direction few anticipated. Instead of focusing on Queen Camilla, the bulk of the conversation immediately shifted to centre on Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The shift was pretty subtle at first. Press photographers seemed completely drawn to Catherine's arrival, her natural interactions with the crowd, and the absolute confidence she projected during the whole event. Live television broadcasts lingered on her presence far longer than most royal observers expected. Clips featuring her best moments started spreading like wildfire online, racking up views, comments and debates at a pace that shocked even seasoned royal insiders. What made this moment so fascinating was that it did not stem from a formal press release or some dramatic public confrontation. There was absolutely no open fighting, no official promotion, and definitely no palace statement suggesting that Catherine's daily role had suddenly been expanded. Yet public reaction quickly wrote its own narrative. Across various social media channels, discussions started focusing heavily on what Catherine actually represented rather than just what she was doing. Loyal supporters praised her poise, while others argued that this spotlight reflected massive growing expectations for the future of the monarchy. As those discussions grew louder, direct comparisons inevitably followed. Royal experts started closely analysing the very different roles held by Catherine and Camilla. Camilla remained the Queen, continuing to carry out her highly important royal responsibilities. Still, many viewers seemed far more interested in the woman they believed would ultimately shape the next major chapter of the British monarchy. Whether that is fair or not, that exact perception heavily shaped how the event was reported and discussed. This rising fascination with Catherine is raising some massive questions. Was the crowd just reacting to a highly popular princess, or were they witnessing the very first signs of a major quiet shift in actual power? Some palace analysts suggested that Catherine has slowly evolved into one of the monarchy's most effective and reliable public faces. Others warned against reading way too much into just one public appearance, pointing out that media hype constantly goes up and down and rarely represents actual institutional power. Even so, the numbers were really hard to ignore, with articles spotlighting Catherine's role, pulling in massive amounts of public engagement. Photos of her looks spread everywhere. Talk shows kept coming back to the exact same topic, debating not just what happened on the day, but what it means for the shifting public mood. In contrast, Camilla's presence seemed to generate much less buzz despite her incredibly senior role as Queen. By the end of the day, the actual event felt completely secondary to the massive public reaction surrounding it. What started out as a totally routine royal engagement had exploded into a massive debate over visibility, true influence, and public perception. No lines were crossed and no formal power had actually shifted. Still, millions had witnessed something that felt genuinely important. Whether this marks the start of a major transition or just a fleeting moment of high public interest is still unclear. What was becoming impossible to ignore, however, was this undeniable feeling that Catherine now sits right at the heart of the royal family story, and nobody can look away. Why is Catherine suddenly commanding far more attention than Queen Camilla at a basic public event meant to be entirely routine? So, who is quietly losing their grip behind the scenes? And why are worried royal insiders suddenly tracking every single move as something silent begins shifting behind those palace walls? Let us break down the details. Visibility is transforming into a whole new power. What makes this surging interest in Catherine so remarkable is that it is not tied to a single event. Instead, it has been building steadily over time, almost entirely under the radar, until people suddenly woke up and realized just how much her royal role has shifted. There was never any big press release from Buckingham Palace announcing a promotion or new authority. Yet, looking at the royal schedule, signs of her rising responsibility are getting impossible to ignore. More and more, Catherine is appearing solo at highly important public engagements, and these are not just basic photo ops planned to grab easy headlines. Many of these outings involve heavy-hitting causes and charities carrying serious weight with the public. Every single appearance puts her right in front of the crowds without the backup of Prince William or any other senior members of the royal family. With each passing event, she looks incredibly comfortable operating as a major leading figure in her own right. At the exact same time, her influence on the global stage seems to be rapidly expanding. Major diplomatic events, cultural projects, and high-profile meetings are constantly placing Catherine right at the centre of global attention. Royal insiders note that she is representing the modern values and priorities tied to the future of the crown. While carrying out these duties is not totally unusual for a Princess of Wales, the massive scale and constant nature of her work has led several experts to wonder if a bigger plan is unfolding. This debate is not actually about formal power. On paper, absolutely nothing has shifted. Camilla is still the reigning queen, and the established hierarchy of the royal family remains completely intact. However, influence inside a modern royal family is measured in very different ways. Public trust, heavy media attention, and symbolic leadership can quickly turn into powerful forms of real authority. In that environment, Catherine is clearly gaining massive momentum, and media coverage of her daily duties definitely reflects that shift. The headlines started shifting away from her basic daily duties, focusing instead on what she truly stood for. Commentators kept calling her a pillar of stability. Her loyal supporters highlighted her decades of quiet preparation, insisting she had slowly but surely won over the public's trust. But critics weren't so sure, wondering if everyone was obsessing over what might happen tomorrow instead of looking at today's reality. This fierce debate only fed the media frenzy. With the spotlight intensifying, comparisons to Camilla became impossible to escape. Still, there was no open feud or public clashing, but the public mind always invents a division where none officially exists. Even as Camilla went about her royal duties, Catherine was hogging almost all the attention whenever people talked about the crown's future. Every single public appearance only made that contrast feel stronger. A few palace insiders saw this as the natural result of long-term succession planning. But others suspected it simply mirrored what people now demand from royalty. At its core, the royal family survives on pure symbolism, and those powerful symbols can shift long before official titles ever do. This possibility injected a massive dose of drama into what should have been completely routine public events. By now, people were talking about a lot more than just Catherine's high approval ratings. Instead, serious questions were popping up about raw power media visibility and preparation for what lies ahead. Without a single official announcement, she was stepping right into a role that millions of people already associated with true leadership. And that powerful perception was starting to rewrite the entire narrative surrounding the royal family. Royal experts picked up on quiet changes in protocol media coverage and overall tone, suggesting a massive shift was happening behind the scenes, even if court officials refused to speak about it. That tight-lipped silence only fueled intense rumours about what was really going on back there. Catherine kept handling duties that seemed way bigger than her actual royal title. So what is actually happening behind those closed palace doors? Is her slow rise to the top just an accident, or is it a calculated plan from the high-ups, who wins when everything finally gets exposed? Let's dig in. As the palace gossip heats up and Catherine's star keeps rising, there is another fascinating development that you simply cannot ignore anymore. Strangely, the chatter around Queen Camilla seemed to be growing quieter, yet nothing dramatic had actually happened. There were no press releases, no explosive controversies, and zero obvious changes to her daily royal schedule. But across every television broadcast front-page headline and internet discussion board, the spotlight was clearly shifting in a completely new direction. Slowly but surely, Catherine became the one face everyone wanted to see. In the beginning, this shift was barely noticeable. Media coverage still featured both royals, and both kept busy with their duties. But the way the press covered these events was starting to change. Articles that once would have centred around Camilla were now heavily highlighting Catherine's outfits, her charm, and her overall impact. Pictures of Catherine suddenly got the prime front-page spots. News headlines put her name first, even when they attended the same royal event. Public buzz followed her everywhere she went, completely overshadowing everyone else. Of course, this wasn't about official rank. Camilla was still the queen, occupying an undeniably massive role in the monarchy. Catherine, regardless of all this glowing attention, was still just the Princess of Wales. But public obsession rarely cares about official ranks. Instead, people follow their feelings, their hopes, and the strong vibe that one specific person represents tomorrow. This very dynamic was starting to shape how the public perceived the crown. Naturally, royal experts picked up on this trend. Debates broke out over whether what the public wanted was shifting. Some experts argued her massive charm simply made people pay attention, but others suspected a much deeper play was in motion. They pointed to how steady this trend was, proving her constant presence wasn't just a fluke or a quick burst of positive PR. Rather, her influence was building step by step through dozens of high-profile events and public outings. As these rumours spread, comparisons between Catherine and Camilla became the talk of the town. Royal fans actively debated what this striking contrast actually meant. Was she just riding a wave of massive popularity, or was she slowly turning into the main pillar holding up the whole royal brand? This question was quite serious because it went way deeper than just a simple popularity contest. It hinted that how people view leadership within the House of Windsor was undergoing a quiet evolution. But not every royal expert agreed with that theory. A few skeptics warned against making huge assumptions based purely on media trends. Public interest is incredibly fickle, and flashy headlines usually feed reader cravings rather than actual palace operations. In their eyes, the intense focus on Catherine didn't mean she had gained real power. It was probably just basic curiosity about what lies ahead. Even so, that argument only proved the exact same point. People were keeping their eyes locked on Catherine. The more the spotlight shifted toward her, the harder it was to ignore how quiet things had gotten for Camilla. There was zero public fighting, yet the growing divide was impossible to overlook. One prominent royal lady was clearly picking up major momentum, while the other was slowly drifting out of the main picture altogether. Whether this was a calculated move or totally natural, that feeling was starting to define how millions viewed the crown, paving the way for massive questions about where the crown's future focus will ultimately land. As media attention shifts quietly behind palace walls, is a deeper power struggle unfolding between these two prominent women? Or are we just witnessing the start of a highly calculated PR pivot, and who actually wins when the bright spotlight moves away? Don't go anywhere. The signs of change are getting louder. By now, the gossip around Catherine wasn't just fueled by eager fans or media hysteria anymore. Something much bigger seemed to be unfolding. The clues were quiet, sprinkled across her official public appearances. From public statements to royal duties, these events started forming a clear pattern that royal watchers just could not ignore. More and more, it looked like Catherine was not just enjoying the spotlight. She was actually becoming the face of the entire royal brand. The first real clues popped up in official palace updates. Press releases that used to share the spotlight equally now put Catherine front and centre. From official portraits to news coverage of major events, her presence was suddenly way more obvious than ever before. Sure, there was no official title change, but inside the royal family, those unspoken symbols always carry the absolute heaviest weight. Anyone who tracks the endless royal drama knows that high visibility is never just an accident. Meanwhile, where Catherine stood during major public events was turning some serious heads. The princess was constantly placed right at the front of massive occasions, taking roles that guaranteed all eyes were on her. These moments were not just one-offs. They kept happening, which started raising serious questions among top commentators and royal insiders. Some experts wondered if palace officials were actively reacting to Catherine's massive popularity by intentionally handing her a much bigger public stage. Others suspected a far more calculated plan was at play, and the global angle made things even more fascinating. Catherine was constantly being sent abroad to represent the British crown. From crucial diplomatic meetings to massive charity tours, she quickly transformed into one of the royal family's most recognisable global faces. Every single public outing cemented her reputation as someone who could effortlessly charm people both at home and across the globe. To supporters, this proved her incredible readiness and experience. For critics, it sparked rumours that the royal expectations were quietly changing. Meanwhile, talk about Queen Camilla slowly faded into the background. Camilla was still the queen, of course, doing her daily royal duties. Yet the public was looking elsewhere, and that contrast was impossible to ignore. Every news story about the royals ended up focusing entirely on Catherine, even when other senior family members were right there. This massive gap sparked intense debates about the royal family's actual plans for the future. Soon experts pointed to another huge factor, which was symbolism. The royal family usually communicates through subtle gestures and clever seating plans rather than making direct official statements. Because of this silent code, even the tiniest choices can hold massive hidden meaning. Seeing Catherine take centre stage so often convinced many observers that the palace was finally acknowledging her growing power. But skeptics insisted this was simply routine event planning and nothing more. Still, the sheer amount of gossip showed just how obsessed people were. As things kept moving, the media story about Catherine began to shift. Nobody was asking if she was popular anymore. That fact had been obvious for years. The real question was whether the powerful grey suits behind the scenes were adapting to her power. Of course, no official statement or anonymous source ever admitted to this. Still, all these tiny clues added up to create one powerful impression. The palace seemed completely fine with putting Catherine right at the heart of its brand. This suggests her real power is growing way past mere popularity and into something far more serious. So what is actually going on behind palace walls as Catherine takes over in ways nobody saw coming? Who is secretly pulling the strings and shifting the power balance behind closed doors? What are they hiding from us, and how much of this change has already happened? Do not look away. Future plans are already taking shape. As Catherine stayed in the spotlight, the whispers about her role moved to a whole new level. This was no longer just about her high approval ratings, good press, or great public events. Instead, people started focusing on what her massive rise actually meant for the future of the crown. Even without any official word, many experts sensed the public was being prepped for a very long-term plan, one slowly built on quiet symbolism and stage presence, rather than loud press announcements. The change was clear in the main themes of her work. Every headline about Catherine began to heavily push ideas of stability, continuity, and the royal future. Whether visiting local charities or championing major royal causes, or hosting huge public events, she always seemed linked to where the royals were going, not where they had been. It was a subtle difference, but extremely important. People no longer saw Catherine as just another working royal, doing her daily job. She was now viewed as the key to the family's next big chapter. This massive shift did not happen overnight. For many years, Catherine kept a perfectly clean image, dodging scandals, while quietly building strong bonds with massive charities groups and local communities across the entire country. All that steady hard work was finally paying off. Public trust in her was rock solid, and experts loved pointing out how she connected with all age groups. Because of this, every conversation about the future put her name at the very centre. Meanwhile, people began comparing her rise to historical shifts in the monarchy much more often. Experts closely studied how the palace prepared the public for major leadership changes during earlier historical eras. Historically, future monarchs slowly stepped into the glaring limelight long before they actually took over any official duties. Many observers saw clear similarities in Catherine's rising profile. They claimed the palace relies heavily on public trust, making slow, quiet handovers far more successful than sudden, shocking shake-ups in the family. Others saw things differently. They warned that what the public sees does not always match what is secretly being planned behind closed doors. Even those who dismissed the gossip had to admit one undeniable chilling truth. Every single whisper about the future of the crown began and ended with her, while Queen Camilla was left quietly pushing through her routine duties to keep up appearances. But the public's gaze had completely shifted away from the present, fixating instead on what lay ahead, destabilizing the old power balance. While Camilla stood as the face of the current regime, the restless public was already looking past her, craving the glamorous figures of tomorrow. A massive shift was happening right before our eyes, proving that raw, real influence in the palace is never just about official titles. Public trust, symbolic weight, and constant media obsession can easily morph into a terrifyingly real kind of authority, and Catherine was holding all three of those winning cards. Whether this was a calculated chess move or pure luck, her position was transforming from simple popularity into raw, heavy-hitting leverage. As this narrative took hold, it became totally impossible to talk about Catherine without questioning the survival direction and very soul of the entire British monarchy. While royal handlers desperately try to control the narrative behind closed palace doors, what is secretly being cooked up right in front of us, who is actually being groomed for the throne? What subtle warnings are being sent, and how long can they keep this lid on before it blows? Stay tuned, because one night changed absolutely everything. The explosive moment that flipped the entire story on its head did not start with some grand official palace press release. Instead, it all started at a routine public engagement. The senior royals showed up, shook hands, smiled for the cameras, and played their usual parts to maintain the illusion of a perfect family. But by the time the curtains closed, a quiet earthquake had rattled the room. The actual event did not even matter anymore. Every single headline belonged to Catherine. From the very second she arrived, the media's focus was locked onto the Princess of Wales. The cameras followed her every breath. The front pages screamed her name. Within minutes, stunning images of her flooded the web and viral social media feeds. What should have been standard news coverage quickly mutated into a massive media frenzy across television networks and online platforms. She completely hijacked the narrative. This sudden shift caught veteran royal insiders completely off guard because it broke every single old rule in the book. Normally, these big royal outings divide the media spotlight evenly among the family. But this time, Catherine commanded an intense, almost magnetic wave of fascination that left everyone else standing in her shadow as newspapers obsessed over her every single gesture. Even articles that mentioned the entire royal family ended up pushing her right into the centre, a phenomenon that only grew wilder as global news picked it up. International media outlets quickly jumped on the bandwagon, supercharging the global obsession and feverish speculation surrounding Catherine. Detailed stories dissecting her immense influence, record-breaking popularity, and looming future role popped up all over major global outlets, turning a local spark into a massive worldwide wildfire. The global press was no longer treating her as just a standard working royal. Instead, they crowned her as the ultimate saviour of the modern institution. The glaring contrast with Queen Camilla was impossible to miss. While Camilla tirelessly went through the motions of her heavy royal duties to keep things running, the public had already checked out, turning their backs to focus entirely on Catherine. They kept things polite behind palace walls, but public perception had already drawn a sharp, undeniable line in the sand. One woman represented the dusty, aging status quo of the house, while the other stood tall as the bright, sparkling hope for tomorrow. The real alarm bells started ringing when veteran royal reporters who had spent decades watching the palace began pointing out this exact trend. These were not just casual observers. These experts had survived multiple successions and knew how fast public favour can turn. So when these highly respected voices suddenly started speaking up about this shift, the rumours instantly became cold, hard facts. They did not agree on what this shift meant, but they all admitted that the ground had moved. Speculation ran completely wild. Some argued that Catherine had genuinely earned this massive spotlight through years of loyal service, while others whispered that the palace itself was deliberately putting her out front as a shield against growing bad press. A few warned that temporary media hype is never the same as real palace power. Yet no matter who you believed, the writing was on the wall. By the time the event wrapped, the spotlight had shifted so violently that even the most stubborn critics were silenced. What felt like a wild conspiracy theory just weeks ago now seemed highly likely. Catherine was no longer just a popular princess playing her part. She had become the vital lens through which millions of people were viewing the entire future of the crown. And that realization triggered shockwaves that will last for years. A massive shift happened that day, but was it a masterfully orchestrated plan or a complete accident? How did Catherine hijack the global stage so effortlessly? What dark secrets are royal handlers desperately trying to hide from us? And if this is just chapter 1, what happens to the fragile royal hierarchy? Keep watching. The royal power balance is shifting. By the end of this dramatic saga, the tense atmosphere around the royal family had hardened into something permanent. What started as subtle tweaks in media coverage had officially solidified into a clear, undeniable coup of public attention. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was no longer just another highly visible face smiling in the royal lineup. She had become the sole anchor holding the crown's entire modern reputation together. There was never an official announcement, and no formal declarations were ever read to the public. Yet you could see it written all over the faces of the crowd, screaming her name, even while Queen Camilla's official status remained completely unchanged on paper. She kept performing her duties, representing the old continuity of a fading royal era. But the way people talked about her presence and viewed her role felt totally different from how it used to be. Sure, she remained locked into the core structure of the royal family, but she simply wasn't commanding that massive wave of automatic public spotlight that top-tier royals used to get. This transition wasn't some dramatic exit or a cold replacement, but rather the spotlight slowly drifting elsewhere as Kate Middleton's growing star power took on a whole new meaning. It went far beyond mere popularity contests and relentless tabloid buzz. More and more, her presence seemed directly tied to how the British monarchy wanted to project its entire global image. What the public expected, how the media reported, and the palace's own public relations game all started centering heavily around her. All of this coordination made it look like she wasn't just showing up for ribbon cuttings, but actually defining how the public viewed the entire concept of duty. Royal insiders noted this silent transition didn't happen overnight or cause any dramatic public blowouts. Instead, it played out through a series of highly visible appearances. Princess Kate was front and centre for every major symbolic moment. Her public outings constantly generated the biggest buzz online. The press routinely cast her as the main star, even when other high-ranking royals were standing right beside her. Over time, these constant clues built up a massive story that went way beyond single events, hinting at a whole new direction for royal leadership. Meanwhile, the palace's public relations team started mirroring this shift in very clever ways. official updates constantly used her image to showcase a steady, reliable future. She was constantly positioned right where the cameras and crowds would naturally focus. Even without any official announcements, the way the palace managed the spotlight seemed to bend completely around her rising influence. No one knew if this was a deliberate scheme or just a reaction to what fans wanted, but the results were undeniable, sparking plenty of debate. Some saw this as a natural next step built on years of training and solid public support. Others believed it showed an aging institution quietly reshaping itself to keep up with modern demands. More skeptical royal watchers warned that media hype doesn't translate to real power, pointing out that official titles and structures haven't actually changed at all. But even the harshest critics couldn't ignore how steady and relentless this trend had actually become. At this point, her power hovered somewhere between public gossip and cold, hard reality. She wasn't actively dethroning the old guard, nor was she rewriting the official rule book. Instead, she became the magnetic core, pulling in all the public obsession hopes and endless rumours, while Queen Camilla's official job stayed exactly the same. But the real power dynamic had quietly changed. As that shift became too obvious to sweep under the rug, it left everyone wondering if the institution was just following the crowd or quietly rebuilding itself around her. So what is your take on this? Has Kate Middleton completely hijacked the royal narrative, while Queen Camilla is being slowly pushed into the shadows by the public? Drop your comments down below. Make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more juicy royal updates.